Hey, welcome to this beginner art course, the series in which I break down art theory and practice into easy to digest, bite-sized chunks. I'm Erin, and you're watching episode 6, where we're having a look at colour theory basics and getting a handle on picking colour schemes out for our work. This whole episode is going to be pivoting around the humble colour wheel, and how to understand and apply it to the images we create. So really, we need to start by making ourselves a colour wheel for reference. There is some contention surrounding what colours really are the primary ones, because we've all been taught that they should be red, yellow and blue, but in reality, cyan, magenta and yellow should be our primary colours. You will have heard of this combination if you've ever bought printer ink and it has come in CMYK, or cyan, magenta, yellow, black. In practice, I don't know if this information actually changes much because of naming conventions, but I'm just putting the information out there. So let's put together our wheel. We start off with our primaries. These are the colours that we can't mix from anything else, and they sit equidistant from each other about the wheel: cyan, magenta and yellow. The secondary colours can be mixed from primaries and go in between. These are red, blue and green. Tertiary colours make up the next level of resolution and are joining the primary colours and the secondary colours. I do think that it's worth having one of these wheels knocking around for reference. It can really help you make decisions on the fly. Now we have our colour wheel, we can start understanding some of the other factors. Hue refers to a point on the wheel. Saturation or chroma refers to the intensity of the colour, where something being desaturated means that it's grey and something being highly saturated means that it is strongly coloured. Value refers to the degree of lightness or darkness. Other words we can use to describe a colour are tone, which is where the value is constant but the saturation is changed; shade, where the value and saturation decrease; and tint, where the value increases and the saturation decreases. Here are two standard colour pickers and how those words translate into practical use. The last thing that's important to talk about here is temperature. Colour temperature refers to the visual warmth or coldness of a colour relative to the colours around it. Temperature really is relative as well. We can see here the grey in the middle appears to be on the warm side against the blue square, but when we change the square to red, the exact same grey feels cold. So that sort of explains it. Temperature is the relative redness or blueness of a colour, and can be used to articulate mood or atmosphere or weather conditions or many other factors in an image. I'm going to show you the 5 most common colour schemes and how they sit on the colour wheel, and then we can look at some artists' work and see how they've manipulated colour. First of all is monochrome. This means that an image is made with only one hue. Black and white would be monochrome, but also a painting done entirely with shades of red or various greens would also be a monochromatic painting. If you're doing this, you have to really use contrasting saturation values to your advantage. Next, one most of us have heard of, complementary. A complementary scheme uses 2 points on the wheel that sit across from one another. This one is nice to use because it creates a pleasing tension between the two hues that can really aid you to lead the viewer's eyes. You're going to want to have a bias towards one of the hues rather than using both equally, as you risk ending up with quite a flat image. Third, we have analogous. This is a scheme where the colours are adjacent on the wheel, and it will give you a calm, natural feeling scheme. You may think it would clash, but we see blues and greens next to each other all the time in nature. You have to think about how the scheme is going to fit in with your subject matter and decide if this peaceful combination is going to help your image or not. Triadic colour schemes can often feel bright and bouncy. They use 3 points equally spaced around the wheel, and again you're going to want to give it a bias one way or other so you don't accidentally end up just flattening your image and leaving the viewer with nothing to look at. The final scheme is tetradic, or double complementary. As the name suggests, it uses 4 colours in 2 pairs of complementaries. A variation on this scheme is the square scheme, where all 4 points on the wheel are equidistant. Normally this colour scheme would be used to differentiate between elements in a piece. For example, you might have one pair describing the foreground and another pair describing the background. I feel like of all of the schemes I've mentioned, this one is the hardest to get right because there's so many things to be juggling. I don't think these schemes should be picked arbitrarily, but rather to enhance your image and direct the viewer through your work and really help you to pick out the story. Experiment as much as you can and see what works best for you and your subjects. For this final section, I've just picked out 10 paintings from the web gallery of art, link in the description, so we can see if we can identify the schemes the artists have used. A lot of these artists won't have necessarily been aware of how they were using colours. Probably for most of them it would have just been a very intuitive thing, and I'm not trying to overanalyze them, but just using these to illustrate how the different schemes can be used effectively. Apologies in advance for any mispronunciation of names. So this first image is by Louise Josephine Sarrazin de Belmont and is called the Santa Maria del Sasso. The majority of this image is this lovely warm ochre colour and even the sky. You can see how she's barely painted that mountain to the rear, just glossed over it, really displaying the humid, hazy atmosphere. Even the greens in the trees are sitting way over on the yellow side. The bias is definitely towards the warm colours, but we do have blues in the water and on the lady's dress, as well as a few points in the shadows on the trees. So, from that we can see that this image is working with a complementary colour scheme. Number 2, we have a painting by Mary Cassatt of her sister Lydia Cassatt. She's used a contrast of detail as well as value to bring the gaze to rest on the face, but there's a lot of interest in the background, making for quite an active piece to look at. We have all of these deep reds in the quilt against the teal of the bench, but also we have a deep violet in her scarf and bonnet sitting against the green bank behind her. And look how close to a perfect square tetradic that is. I wonder how true to real life this image actually is, and how much Mary Cassatt actually worked the colours around to make it so well balanced as this. It's important to note that that's the responsibility of the artist. You have to make that decision whether or not you're trying to reproduce reality as closely as possible, or whether or not you're working more as a sort of creative image maker. And you need to balance what you're trying to interpret against what you're trying to project. This third one is the Bois de Boulogne by Nadezhda Petrovich. Obviously we have a lot of green around on the far sides of the banks and going up the trees, but then we also have all of these areas of reddy brown coming through at the water's edge and in the trunks. There's a bit of brown pulled down over that reflection at the bottom right to counterpoint the area of teal up on the left. So when we see these on the colour wheel, we can see that the painting is working with a triadic colour scheme. This fourth painting is called In the Grass and is by an artist called Berta Morisot. This is such a calm image, so easy to look at. The colours really emphasise the pace of the whole scene. Just the dog and the butterfly net and the long grasses, but the lack of the deep shadows, it really emotes the feeling of a bright but slightly overcast summer's day. We can see that the colours in this painting range from these yellows around to the warm greens, but really not much further than that, so the scheme used here is analogous. Painting number 5, Man with a Cat by Cecilia Beau. This is such a stunning painting, such a good understanding of skin and light. Beau has used these soft, bright colours and left the background fairly undefined in contrast to the model. It's the slightly vacant, concerned look on his face that really brings it to life for me. I do concede that there is a touch of blue in his type, but the rest of this image is painted with all various shades and tones of orange, and that makes it probably my favourite monochromatic painting. Painting number 6, called Sunlight in the Blue Room, and is by an artist called Anna Kirstine Anker. Such a warm painting here, a really homely scene just sat in the late afternoon sun knitting. She's kept herself to this warm violet and burnt sienna palette. Now, these aren't perfectly across from one another, but I'm still going to call this one a complementary palette. While she has used almost equal split of the colours, it still works visually because of the bright patch of sunlight on the far wall. It gives the eyes somewhere to come back to and rest. And that's so important. Our eyes have to have a place to go back to when we observe things, be it a change of level of detail or colour temperature or value. This next painting is called Judith with the Head of Holofernes by Elisabetta Sadani. We have our traditional red, blue and green triadic scheme here. There's interesting lighting in this one. The moon is clearly behind them, and from the angle of the crescent the sun ought to be far below the horizon, but something close and bright has lit the characters from the top right of the image. Painting number 8 is called Haystack by Blanche Ochaudet Monet. Another beautiful painting here, really nice and calm. Almost the entire painting is done with shades of blue, and it's super desaturated, giving this cold, frosted feeling. In the haystack there are these little pockets of yellow coming through, and by that contrast the blue feels even colder. A great example of complementary colours used well. Painting number 9 is called Lamentation by Plautilla Nelli. This is clearly somebody who's done a lot of draped fabric studies. She really does understand that satiny sheen you get. Our colour scheme here is maybe not quite so obvious at first glance, so let's pick these out. We have the rich blues of the gowns against the almost mustard yellow in the foreground, but then we also have those red clothed figures, and that's not giving us a nice triadic, they're all bunched to one side. But there, just in the background, there are some mountains, teal against the horizon. So this one we can confidently say is a tetradic painting. I have to say, while the painting is accomplished, I actually think the colour scheme detracts from the gravity of the event. It's almost whimsy, it's so saturated and there's no clear direction for the eyes to move, which is exacerbated by the fact that the figures are all looking out in different directions. We have reached our final example. This one is by Lila Cabot-Terry and is Monet's Garden at Giverny. I am in love with this painting at the moment. It really makes me feel so hopeful, and that's through the combination of mark making and the colour scheme. Almost entirely painted with either this warm summery green or the blue violet of the blossom. And then this structure on the side of the stream, maybe a hide? It just feels so summery to me. I have the smell of wild garlic in my nose just looking at it. As we can see from the colour wheel, this one is an analogous scheme. Knowledge is power. And knowing colour theory, even in this fairly basic capacity, can give you so much more confidence to try new things, knowing that they will fit together and why. Or to understand why a painting isn't coming together as you had wanted, help you overcome that hurdle and to be able to finish in a way that you're happy with. Colour theory is a big topic, and there's a lot of information out there that I've not even alluded to, so if you're interested in video game graphics or photography or design, there are a whole load of other factors to be considered, but I'll leave those specialisms for you to explore. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode and been able to take some information away from it. Good luck with your own work and explore and experiment as much as you can. If you've liked this one, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, hit that subscribe button, and as always, thank you for watching. Have a great day.